This video, I'm going to teach you guys the Gaussian elimination method, which is a tricky little way to take a system of three linear equations. We got x, we got y, we got z. We got to figure out all three of those variables. We're going to plug it into a matrix. I'll show you how to go from here to here real quick. And then we just got to go, that's all it is right there, my friend. We just got to make it look like that. Take this matrix, do some tricks, make it look like that, and then we have completed the Gaussian elimination method, because once we get an isolated z, an isolated y, and an isolated x, we can figure out our values for each variable very quickly. So how would I make this from here? Well, first, the system here goes to there because you got a -2, a 3, 3. You're just plugging that in as your x column. Then we got our y column, -1, 4, 6. You can see those values here, here, and here. And then we got -1, +1, 5, -1, +1, 5. And then our totals. Okay, so here's our matrix. Now, what can I do to this matrix to get a 0 in the bottom corner pocket? Well, the first thing I noticed is I got a 3 there and a 3 there. So row 2 and row 3, let's mark those, by the way. R1, R2, R3. Okay, so now I'm going to take R2, I'm going to subtract R3. R2 minus R3, and that's going to give me a new matrix over here that I can then use. So I'm going to set that up. So if I take 3 minus 3, 4 minus 6, 1 minus 5, 19 minus 43, I'm going to take that information, that's all going to go down in the bottom row now. So 3 minus 3 makes a 0. And remember, my goal is to get zeros in the bottom corner pocket. So I got 3 minus 3, that's 0. I got 4 minus 6, that's -2. I've got a 1 minus a 5, that's a -4. And then I got a 19 minus 43, that's -24. Yep. Okay, so now just take 3, 4, 1, 19, copy it down. 3, 4, 1, 19. -2, -1, -1, -11, -2, -1, -1, -11. I'm just copying down row 1 and row 2. The only one that changes is the bottom one. Okay, so now, what's the next step that I can do? Something that I can do to these equations so that I can get another 0 here or 0 there. I'm going to go for a 0 here. I can take a -2. I can turn that into a 6. I can take a 3 and I can turn that into a 6. So I'm going to have to take row 1, remember this is row 1, row 2. I'm going to multiply row 1 times, we're going to multiply that by 3. Because that's going to give me a -6 here. I'm going to take this row, row 2. I'm going to multiply that by a 2, because that's going to give me a +6. So I get a +6 here. I'm going to get a -6 here. And then now that I have those two values, I can subtract, and that's going to give me a 0 in the second row. Okay, so let's just complete this row here. -1 times 3 gives me -3. -1 times 3 gives me -3. I've got my line. And then -11 times 3 gives me -33. I've got 3 times 2, which is 6. 4 times 2, which is 8, 1 times 2, which is 2, and 19 times 2, which is 38. Okay, I can copy the bottom row down, 0, -2, -4, and -24. So now I have a new matrix. Now notice what I have is a -6 here and a +6 there, so I can subtract row 1 from row 2. So I'm going to take row 1 minus row 2, and that's going to give me a new matrix down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this answer down here. So I'm going to slide over here just to give myself some room. We're taking row 1, and I'm going to add it to row, I'm not subtracting here. I'm not subtracting. I'm adding these two equations together, because what that's going to give me here, -6 plus 6, that's going to give me a 0 in the second row, which is what I'm looking for, remember? So -6 plus 6, that's giving me that 0 there. And then we're just going to continue on and get another 0 here, and we'll get our 1s. Okay, so row 1 plus row 2. Row 1 plus row 2. I'm going to go over here. We're going to create our new matrix. -6 plus 6 is 0. I can complete my bottom row. Nothing's going to change because I'm only working with row 1 and row 2. So I got a 0 here, I got a -2 there, I got a -4 here, I got a line, I got a -24, bracket. Okay, -6 plus 6, 0. -3 plus 8, okay, that's 5. -3 plus 2 is -1. -33 plus 38, that's 5. Okay, now I take this top row, I copy it all down. I look at my matrix, and I try and figure out what my next step is to get a 0 there. So really the only thing that makes sense is taking row 3, I think multiplying it by a 2, and then taking row 2, multiplying it by a 2, then I'll take row 3, multiply it by 5, so that I get common 10s, and then I'll subtract from there. And that'll give me a 0 down here, which is the last 0 I'm looking for. And then don't worry, the last step getting 1s, you can do that all in one step really. So I'll show you that, it's not gonna be too much longer. We're almost there. Okay, so now, take row 2. I'm gonna multiply that by 2. I take row 3, I'll multiply that by 5. And then we'll just put that down here, save some space. Okay, so we can copy the top row because we're not doing anything to that right now. So that's still -6, -3, -3, -33. Okay, here we go. So row 2 is times 2. 0 stays 0. 5 times 2 is 10. -1 times 2 is -2. 5 times 2 is 10. 0 times 5 is 0, remains 0. -2 times 5 is -10. Make sure you guys can see. Yeah, you can see it over there. Okay. Row 3 is times 5, so times -4. 5 times -4, -20. -24 times 5, that'd be -110. Yeah. Okay, so now that I have, -100 and, 120, my fault. Okay, so now that I have that, times -120. Okay, sorry, I gotta double check my math sometimes. All right, so now we got this new matrix down here. We're so close to getting a 0 down in the bottom corner. So we're just gonna add these two values together, right? 10 plus -10 gives me a 0 there. So that's row 2 needs to be added to row 3. So we're addition here throughout. Okay, nothing's gonna change on the top, remember, -6, -3, that all remains. So I'm just gonna go up here, running out of room. Okay, nothing changes on top. -6 remains -6. -3 remains -3. -3 remains -3. -33 remains -33. Okay, 0. Okay, we're gonna add 0 plus 0 is 0. We'll still get our 0 here. We're gonna have 10 plus -10 is 0. -2 plus -3. So -2 plus -3 is -22. 10 minus 120 is going to be -110. And now we just take this second row here, and then move it right up into there. 0, 10, -2, 10. Okay, we're almost there. We've got zeros in the corner pocket. Now it's just a matter of getting a 1 here, a 1 there, and a 1 here. So what we got to do is multiply by some fractions, obviously. So So what are we gonna multiply by each one of these to get these fractions down? So looking at these numbers, I'm gonna try to get -6 to be a 1. So I wanna multiply the top row by row 1 needs to be multiplied by -1/6. Because -6 times -1/6 is gonna give me a 1 there. Okay, the second row, I'm trying to get the 10 to become a 1. So I'm gonna multiply that second row by 1/10. And then -22 is in the second, that's where the 1 is over here, right? Remember, I'm trying to get a 1 diagonally going up the matrix. So that's why I'm going for these three numbers. -22, I'm gonna take row 3, I'm gonna multiply it by -1/22. And that's gonna take all these numbers down, it's gonna break these numbers down so that I have values that I can work with. All right, so we're just gonna multiply these numbers on the top row times -1/6, middle row times 1/10, bottom row times -1/22, so I can get that 1, 1, 1 diagonal going down. So I'll just tell you right now, that's what that's gonna look like. We're gonna have a 1 there, 1 here, 0, 0, 0. Okay, that's what the matrix is gonna end up looking like because of what I'm multiplying by. So let's just go through the numbers. -6 times -1/6, 1. -3 times -1/6, that's 1/2. We're gonna get another 1/2. -33 times -1/6, that's gonna be +5.5. Down here, I'm gonna get -2 times 1/10, that's -1/5. 10 times 1/10 is 1. -110 times negative, that's +5. Okay, so this matrix right here, that's our key. We're gonna use that matrix over here. I'm just gonna rewrite it. So, because I gotta get myself some space over here now. I got a 1, I got a 0, I got a 0, 0, 1, a 1. Okay, remember, that's what it's all about, is getting it to this point right here. Once you get it to there, it'll help you get all three of the values you need. So, we got a -1/5 there. Now we're just stealing this information. 1/2, 1/2, 5.5. We got a 1 and we got a 5. Okay, so now remember, this is Z, this is Y, this is X. Okay, so Z is equal to 5. I'm gonna put a box around that right now because we got one of our values. Now that I got Z is equal to 5, I can multiply it by -1/5, and we got 1 here. So remember this equation, because we've eliminated down to 0, this is really just Y plus -1/5 times Z, which is 5. -1/5 times 5 is -1. So now we got Y minus 1, okay? Is equal to, remember this is like an equal sign, it's equal to 1 plus 1, cancel, plus 1, Y is equal to 2. So now we got 2 of our variables, Y, we get Z, Y is equal to 2, Z is equal to 5. And last but not least, we gotta put this value in for Y, this value in for Z, okay, multiply them out, and we got 1 here, so it's isolated. Okay, so all we need is one last step. We gotta take 1, which is X, plus 1/2 times Y, Y is worth 2, plus 1/2 times Z, which is 5, and that's supposed to equal 5.5. Almost there, okay? X is gonna be equal to 2 times 1/2 is 1. 1/2 times 5 is 5.5, or 5/2, excuse me. Is equal to 5.5. Well, 5/2, that's just 2.5. 3.5, take away from 5.5, X is 2. So now we got X, Y, and Z. So we can go and find some empty space over here. Say x is equal to 2. Y is equal to 2. Z is equal to 5. And that's using the Gaussian method, where basically you take one matrix and then you break it down into a matrix that's set up zeros in the corner, 1 down the diagonal, and then once you get it set to that, boom, that value is going to be equal to the z. Take that z term, multiply it by the value you have in the matrix. That's your leftover isolated variable for y. And do the same thing up in the top row. It gives you all 3 of the variables you're looking for in that 3-system equation. We found x, we found y, we found z. Looks like a lot on this whiteboard, it sure is. I mean, but like some of them are harder than others, but obviously in this one we had to subtract, we had to multiply to get like terms, or excuse me, like values, I guess, so that we could subtract and eliminate. So we had about 4 or 5 steps to go through in this one, multiplying and doing some tricks with it. But just think about your number sense, figure out how to get numbers to match up. Once you get those to match up, you can subtract to eliminate, add to eliminate, you know, those substitution methods we learned back in our algebra days. So hopefully this makes sense. Study hard and good luck on our upcoming test.